Welcome back to Spill the Sauce, a Sunday Table podcast. I'm your host, Maria. Before we get into today's conversation, I want to share a few quick updates. Spill the Sauce now has a home on Patreon, and that's where you'll find Antipasti, my Patreon-only mini show, which goes live every Wednesday. For Patreon listeners, new Spill the Sauce episodes will be available early on Fridays, before going live everywhere else on Sundays. Over on Patreon, we'll also be doing a live Q&A a month and one live chat a month. It'll be a quieter, more conversational space to connect beyond the episodes. Another small but meaningful thing, when you subscribe on Patreon, I'll be reading supporter names out loud on the following episode. It's just a way to say thank you and acknowledge the people helping keep this table set. There's absolutely no pressure. The table stays open either way. But if you've been asking how to support the podcast or listen early, Patreon is where you can do that. Another thing is, we're still welcoming your stories. If you have a tradition, a food, a moment that's stayed with you, something you've carried without always knowing why, you're welcome to send it in to sundaytablepodcast@gmail.com. This podcast is built around shared experiences, and there's room for more voices at the table. So, today's episode is a solo one, and I've been sitting on this one for a long time. This conversation is about caretaking and food and the guilt that lives somewhere between the two. So pull up a chair. I became mom's caretaker when I was about 19. Not because anyone sat me down and asked, not because there was a plan. It just happened. Care doesn't always announce itself. Like in many cases, it just shows up and it stays. For years, my life revolved around making sure she was okay, physically, emotionally, practically. And food was part of that care. The cooking, the shopping, planning meals around her medications, energy levels, good days, bad days. So food wasn't just nourishment anymore. It was a responsibility. And when mom took her last breath, that role didn't disappear. It transferred. Now, I'm dad's caregiver. Different needs, different rhythms, same weight. In a lot of families, whether you're Italian, Hispanic, Asian, Eastern European, it doesn't matter, right? Because in many families, food is love. And in caretaker families, food is also obligation. You not only cook because you care, you cook because if you don't, no one else will. And somewhere along the way, that love gets tangled up with guilt. If I don't cook, am I failing? If I'm tired of cooking, am I being selfish? If I want a break, am I abandoning something sacred? So, food becomes a measure of devotion, right? And that's a heavy thing to carry. Now, after mom recovered, she was still very independent. She wanted to be. She needed to be. There were still a lot of things she needed help with. And as she got older, more things came into focus. Her vision, her health, the quiet limitations that don't always get named right away. So we still managed that kitchen together. And so food became this shared language between us. Some days she led, Some days I filled in the gaps. And some days I watched carefully, stepping in only when I had to, trying to honor her independence while making sure nothing slipped through. And I guess that's where the obligation starts to blur, because you're not just cooking anymore, right? You're anticipating, you're adjusting, you're carrying the responsibility of making sure things don't fall apart without letting the other person feel like they've lost themselves. And Mom was a very, very stubborn, very independent Italian woman. It was her kitchen. And, she still very much wanted things her own way. And I tried my best to ensure that it stayed that way as much as possible. And it just feels like the kitchen becomes a balancing act between care and control, between help and overstepping. And the one that always got me was the between love and guilt. Because even when you're doing it together, that weight is still there. And it's that caretaker guilt. It's a quiet guilt. It doesn't scream. It whispers, right? It tells you you're never doing enough. That taking a breather, that rest is indulgence. That resentment makes you ungrateful. And in a way, food plays into that in subtle ways, You cook even when you're exhausted. You plan meals when you'd rather disappear into silence somewhere. And you feel guilty for craving that ease. And it doesn't stop there. Because I was young when this became my role. Young enough that I was still becoming myself, learning how to be a partner, still learning how to build a life that wasn't centered around care. And I got married, started raising a family, and all the while I was still someone's caregiver. And if you're the oldest daughter, especially in an Italian family, that role doesn't feel optional. It's assumed, inherited, quietly passed down. You don't get asked, you get relied on. If you're first generation, you've already been the translator. So that role becomes more apparent as your parents get older. And you become the organizer, the one who remembers the appointments, the medications, all of the birthdays, and all of the important details. You're trusted. And that trust feels like love. But damn it feels like the responsibility you didn't friggin' volunteer for. And caretaking doesn't pause just because your life expands. Oh no, it just stretches. And you stretch with it. And you learn how to carry more. And you gotta do it quietly. You gotta be present in one place while your mind is somewhere else. You gotta try and divide yourself without naming the cost. And the guilt follows you there too. And when you feel it the most? You feel it the most when you just want time that's yours. That you just want your own time. Just a minute to breathe. When you crave a version of life that's lighter. When you imagine ease, and you suddenly and immediately find yourself talking yourself out of it. Because somewhere deep down, you've learned that care means sacrifice, that love means endurance, that showing up means swallowing what you need. And so, you don't complain. You don't ask for relief. You don't name how heavy it feels. You just keep going. And that's the part many people don't. When you've been a caretaker long enough, I truly believe that role becomes your identity. You're the reliable one, the capable one, the trustworthy one, the one who handles things without being asked. And it's almost like people forget about you. They forget that you exist. People don't check in because they just assume that you're fine. They don't offer help because you've never needed it before. And over time, that competence becomes something that you're known for, not something that you're allowed to step out of. So asking for help starts to feel foreign and sometimes impossible. I'm very known to say, no, I'm fine, I got this. Oh, you need that? No problem, I got you. I don't say no very often. I know it's a very people pleaser thing that I need to work on, and I have been working on it over the past few years. But I'm a very yes person because I want to make the people in my life happy. And, the question of asking for help is like, well, who are you if you're not the one who holds everything together, right? So I continue cooking because food keeps the roll intact. And as long as the meals keep coming, the system holds. As long as everyone is fed, no one asks what it costs you. And I think that's why when Mom passed away 2 years ago, I went right into Thanksgiving and I went right into Christmas and right into New Year's and right into Easter. And I went feet first because Dad is going to expect this and my husband is going to expect that and so is going to want this and the other is going to need that. I never relinquished that need to be needed, if that makes sense. And being steady in your steps, being known as the caretaker, being known for the reliable one, for the one that's taking care of everything and everyone, that steadiness, I truly believe that something else is happening. And it's very, very simple what's happening. It's that you're tired. And it's not just that physical tiredness. It's in a way that sits deeper than any amount of sleep can fix. And so you start to wonder where your needs go when everyone else's needs are met first. You question whether rest has to be earned. You forget what it feels like to want something without immediately justifying it. And slowly, quietly, you realize how much of yourself has been folded into care. And you forget that you are human. And that you're allowed to be more. That you're allowed to be more than what you provide. For a long time, I didn't think of caretaking as something that had a cost. It was just what needed to be done, what made sense, and what love looked like in practice. Because in my mind was, well, my mom spent her whole life taking care of us. My dad spent his whole life taking care of us. It just makes sense that we return that love in that same way. And, when something feels inevitable, you don't question it. You don't measure it. You don't stop to ask, what is it taking from you? But over time, the cost of caregiving, of caretaking, it shows up anyway. It shows up in how quickly you feel overwhelmed. In how hard it is to rest without feeling guilty for wanting to rest, for needing to rest. And how unfamiliar it feels to name your own needs out loud. There's times when I'm asked, what do you want? Or what do you need? Or what do you like to do? Guys, I'm drawing a blank. I'm literally drawing a blank because I can tell you that I love to paint. I love the outdoors. I love to write. I love to cook. I have time to cook. And even that feels like a chore. I don't have time to paint. And right now it's winter time, so I won't go outdoors, but I don't remember the last time I took a hike somewhere or just walked along the riverbanks. I don't. Because so much of my time has been going to doctor's appointments and calling doctors and calling nurses and setting up procedures and, making sure that this is being done and making sure that there's no heavy lifting and making, it's a lot. So, yeah, I don't remember what it feels like to put my needs, my wants, my likes first anymore. And, for me, part of this work has been learning to see that cost without turning it into resentment. I don't resent any of it. I don't. I think I was young and I didn't realize that I was allowed at certain points to say, hey, can such and such come and do this so that I can go and do that? I didn't know that I could do that because no one explains caretaking to you, right? And, acknowledging the weight of caregiving doesn't mean that I loved less, that I love less. It just means that I'm carrying and carried a lot. And that distinction matters. And here's why. It matters because so many caretakers are walking around thinking that they're failing. When in reality, and I'm tearing up again, so I apologize, we've been holding more than anyone has ever acknowledged. So seeing the cost is not weakness, guys. It's clarity. And clarity is often the first step toward change, even when that change comes slowly. And this is what I'm getting at. Another thing that caretaking teaches you is self-reliance, right? Not the empowering kind. It's the quiet, isolating kind. Like I said, I'm the first one to say, no, I'm fine. No, I don't need it. I don't need any help. But I'm good. I got it. I got this. It's all good. I got this. Because in the back of my mind is like, if I don't do it, it's not going to be done right. And if it's not done right, something is going to go wrong. And that's not just being a type A personality. That it's beyond that. It's because your loved ones' limitations and needs, and you being their caretaker need to make sure, or you believe that you need to make sure that you are the one ensuring that those needs and limitations are being met and surpassed. Because according to you and to your mind and to your guilt, you're the only one that can do so. You learn how to handle things alone, how to anticipate the needs before they're even spoken, how to keep going without asking any questions or for help. And over the past few years, unlearning all of that has been one of the hardest parts for me. Little by little, I've been learning to ask for help. Little by little. I'm not saying I'm getting good at it. I'm not. I've been learning to ask for support without having to explain myself. Unfortunately, you will, and I do get asked the question, well, why? So you find yourself explaining yourself. There are the few good people that won't ask why. Some understand. And you're like, yeah, go. I got this. Definitely look for the helpers. They're there. One of the biggest ones is learning that needing care myself doesn't erase the years I spent giving it. For a few years I was in therapy. I should probably go back. It's in the works. But therapy helped me put language to things I had normalized for a long time. It gave me a place where I didn't have to be capable or composed. I could just be honest, right? And I think therapy, especially for caregivers and caretakers, is very, very important. Because as I've been saying, we lose ourselves. And how can we take care of a loved one if we've lost ourselves, right? So, forgiveness and therapy became a part of that work too. And here's what I mean by forgiveness, okay? Forgiving myself for what I didn't know at 19. Forgiving myself for believing that exhaustion was a personal failure. Forgiving myself for the ways I thought love had to look like sacrifice every time. And here's what I mean by that. Yeah, our parents sacrificed for us. They went to work. They came home exhausted. They cooked. They cleaned. But their love was not a sacrifice for us, right? Those of us who had parents that loved us, that love wasn't sacrifice. It was the exhaustion that was a sacrifice. The skipped school assembly because they had to work. That was a sacrifice. Sometimes, as in my mom's case, their health was the sacrifice. But the love never was. And so, this acceptance, this realization, it didn't come all at once. It came in small moments. Choosing rest without any type of justifications. I mean, I can tell you, I would just end up falling asleep on mom's couch so many afternoons while she played her little casino game on the computer, and I'd wake up with her chihuahua snuggled in next to me in a blanket on me. And it was small moments like that. The appreciation, right? Or letting someone else step in every now and then. And allowing myself to be cared for without guilt. So I'm still learning. I'm still practicing what it means to receive. Still figuring out how to loosen my grip without letting everything fall apart. But I know this now. Caretaking doesn't have to mean disappearing. And like I said, love doesn't have to mean silence or sacrifice. And asking for help doesn't make what you've done any less meaningful. It just makes room for you too. And as I've been working through this season, I've realized something. Caretaking doesn't stop at the family table. The same instincts to protect, to provide, to smooth things over follow us into the outside world, right? Outside those doors, outside that kitchen. And it follows us into how we tell stories, into how we show up publicly, into what we choose to share and what we keep to ourselves. And sometimes the same guilt shows up there too. The guilt of saying too much or not enough, of worrying about how something will be received, of feeling responsible for how others understand us. We carry those instincts with us, even when the setting changes. And that's what we'll be talking about next week. And so, food can be love, food can be care, and food can be weight. Not the weight around your stomach, guys. The weight on your shoulders, the weight on your mind, the weight in your heart. All of those things can be true at the same time. So, if this episode felt close to your heart, thank you for trusting me with it. And if you're carrying something similar, quietly, faithfully, I see you. If you want to share it with us, you can send it to sundaytablepodcast@gmail.com. And I want to thank you excuse me. I want to thank you for spending some time with me at the table. If this episode stayed with you, if it resonated with you, you can follow the show. I'll see you next Sunday. Pull up a chair. I saved you a seat.